So this is the making of documentary for the new soundtrack for Alwaysland. Within our audio group, it's myself, Alex Bain, I'm the chief supervising sound editor and the primary ADR producer / editor. Philip Bartek is our composer, Matt Smith is our primary ambience and sound designer, Aivaras Azukaitis is our Foley artist, and Max Billingham is our primary mix engineer. We've all previously worked together on numerous audio projects in the past. As a result, there is a working relationship and a level of trust established between ourselves. Creating the soundtrack for Alwaysland presented numerous options as to where we could take it sonically. We believed that there was a lot of scope to create some very interesting sound choices in terms of effects and soundscapes. There is also the strong theme of identity, one's loss of identity and also not knowing what is real. We knew there were various interesting ways in which this could be interpreted through sound, through the use of null extension, acousmatic sounds for flashbacks and other scenes, subtle pitching and time stretching to convey flashbacks and the passing of time, and many other techniques that we discussed. This led on to our vision of how we believed the theme of this particular video should be directed sound-wise. By taking a very David Lynch-esque approach, we could take the shades of darkness that are already apparent in the video and increase the impact of them, making the sound design, and as a result, the film much better. By employing many of the techniques that David Lynch had used in Eraserhead and other films that he had worked on, such as Lost Highway, which was of particular importance, also dealing with the loss of identity and sanity, we created a very unique approach that still conveys the intention of the original film while further enhancing the mood of the piece. Alwaysland featured many instances where Foley could be used to highlight the reality of the scene at hand, through the use of spots, steps and moves, but it also had the potential for Foley to be used in a more creative way, to produce a sense of heightened reality. The process of recording Foley was very similar to what most industry professionals would do. Using a shotgun microphone allowed the group to record sounds directly, with less extraneous noise. Some Foley elements were recorded and performed while viewing the Alwaysland video, in order to sync up correctly to the visual element, while other sounds were recorded without visual aid and synced up later. Many Foley elements were recorded in the studio to reduce the amount of outside noise, while others were recorded in their natural environment in order to simulate the ambience needed for the video, or because the nature of these sounds meant that they could not be practically recorded in the studio, such as cars, environmental noise and many other sounds. The resulting Foley recordings were then cleaned of any extraneous noise. This was mainly done through selective equalization. Having already produced a timesheet for all potential Foley, the act of syncing up audio and visuals became a much quicker process. Overall, most Foley sounds had very little processing applied to them. This was to retain a feeling of authenticity, something that can easily be destroyed when too much processing is applied. Certain scenes that required a sense of heightened reality called for more processing, the enhanced ticking of the clock for example. However, this was also just limited to time stretching, pitch shifting and reverb. Other effects such as phasing, flanging and chorus would pull the viewer out of a state of suspended disbelief and shatter the whole illusion. For this reason, we didn't really use them. Prior to production, we discussed certain scenes where atmospheres and soundscapes would be most effective in portraying the necessary feeling. These discussions formed a basic plot that allowed these sounds to be mapped to the correct scenes. Ambiences, atmospheres and soundscapes were integral to creating a sense of dread and eeriness, something that was massively influenced by David Lynch's use of drones and noise. The majority of these sounds produced for Alwaysland were created through use of recordings that were then slowed down or stretched, pitched down, and then had their low frequencies emphasized. This is a popular technique that's been utilised by sound designers such as Ron Buccar in The Silence of the Lambs. In order to avoid granulation artifacts, these sounds were recorded at higher resolution than the rest of the project. Sample rates of 96 kHz and above. The original Alwaysland video has a thematic tie to the story of Peter Pan. In order to further enhance this tie, subtle techniques were employed. One such technique was the inclusion of a slowed down, reversed piece of audio from the animated Disney version of Peter Pan. This was later added as a pad at a low level during key scenes in Alwaysland. For the scene with Michael and Uncle Ian in the clock shop, an industrial timer was slowed down to serve as the background ambience, creating a tense feeling, while also serving the idea of the location of a clock shop. Similar to the ambiences, the musical score was discussed at length prior to production. A basic guide was created that served as a map for the intended emotions, feelings and themes the music was to portray during key scenes in the video. While David Lynch's films were the touchstone of the group's influences, musically the group also looked to the works of Clint Mansell to provide a wider palette of sounds. The musical score for Moon was of increased importance to Philip Bartek while writing the score for Alwaysland. A decision was made by the group not to rely on music too much. Instead, the majority of the music takes on an ambient role, with sparse string instrumentation. ADR production started with the search for voice actors. We were able to get into contact with 2 potential actors. Zoe Dolphin was recruited to voice the role of Michael's mother, as well as Michael's daughter-in-law. Jed Brooke-Williams was recruited to voice the role of Michael, as well as Michael's father. It was decided that the same actor should voice both Michael and Michael's father. This was to strengthen the tie between Alwaysland and Peter Pan. In most productions of Peter Pan, both Hook and Wendy's father are portrayed by the same actor. The group tried a similar approach with the character of Michael and his father. Originally, we wanted a separate voice actor for every other role, but this was not possible. Due to this unfortunate setback, it was decided that for the remainder of the roles, Matt Smith and myself would provide the voices. ADR was recorded by utilising a single shotgun microphone for all diegetic dialogue, with a distance of around half a foot between the actor and the microphone to ensure a more natural tone. For all non-diegetic narrated sequences, a Neumann U87 was used. This was to give the performance more colour and a broader frequency spectrum. During the first session, there was also building work taking place outside of the recording studio. Some of this was picked up by the microphone, but later filtered out for use of EQ. This was one of the many practical problems we faced during production. Once all the ADR had been recorded, it was then edited by myself to be the appropriate volume, have the correct fades applied, the correct EQ, any noise cleaned up, and also to ensure that the correct reverbs were used appropriate to where the talking was taking place in the video. For narration, larger reverbs and less restrictive EQ was used. This was to give the narration a more ethereal feel. The process of mixing was completed through the use of stems, instead of using individual audio files. This was to reduce buffering time and increase processing power. In order for all the elements to sit correctly with each other, EQ, reverb and automation was used. There was not much processing that needed to be done at the mix stage, as most of this had been done prior to the final mix. Instead, the mix session was primarily focused with creating a cohesive piece of audio where no one element conflicted with another. Compression and limiting were reduced to a minimum, due to most commercial film releases making use of the full dynamic range available to them.